Imagine a crowded room buzzing with conversation. Suddenly, someone laughs a little too loudly at a joke you barely understand. What happens next? You might chuckle along, pretending to get it, swept away by the collective amusement. This, my friends, is the bandwagon effect in action, an invisible force that nudges us towards the safety and comfort of the majority. We've all been there, haven't we? It's a fundamental part of the human experience. From fashion trends to political ideologies, we see it everywhere. Remember the fidget spinner craze? Millions succumbed to its allure. Not necessarily out of genuine interest, but because everyone else seemed to be doing it. This innate desire to fit in, to belong, is deeply ingrained in our psyche. It's a survival mechanism, a way to avoid sticking out like a sore thumb. But what happens when this urge to conform begins to dictate our morals, our values, our very understanding of right and wrong? That's when things get really interesting and a bit unsettling. When we blindly follow the crowd, we surrender our ability to think critically, to question, to dissent. We become passive consumers of popular opinion, relinquishing our autonomy to the dictates of the masses. And that, my friends, is a dangerous path to tread. Why do we conform? It's a question that has puzzled philosophers and psychologists for centuries. One compelling answer lies in our deep-seated need for social acceptance. We are, by nature, social creatures, hardwired to seek connection and belonging. Conformity at its core is a way of signaling our allegiance to the group, of saying, I'm one of you, I belong. But it goes beyond mere social acceptance. Conformity also offers a sense of security, a feeling of safety in numbers. When we align ourselves with the majority, we are essentially outsourcing our decision-making to the collective. We tell ourselves, if everyone else is doing it, it must be okay. This relieves us of the burden of independent thought, of having to critically evaluate our choices and their potential consequences. But here's the catch: the majority isn't always right. In fact, history is replete with examples of times when the masses got it wrong, spectacularly wrong. Think of the Salem witch trials, the Holocaust, the Rwandan genocide, all chilling reminders of the dangers of blind obedience and unquestioning conformity. These events serve as stark warnings, urging us to resist the seductive pull of the crowd and to embrace the power of independent thought. Morality, unlike a mountain, doesn't stand still. It shifts, evolves, sometimes even makes a complete U-turn. What was once considered taboo can become the norm, and vice versa. Think about the dramatic changes in attitudes towards LGBTQ+ rights over the past few decades. What was once unthinkable, marriage equality, adoption rights, is now celebrated in many parts of the world. How did this happen? Certainly not overnight. It took courageous individuals and groups willing to challenge the status quo, to speak truth to power, to change hearts and minds, one conversation at a time. These pioneers understood that societal norms, while seemingly immutable, are in fact malleable, subject to the winds of change blown by those brave enough to question the prevailing narratives. The same can be said for drug legalization and racial equality. Once considered radical, fringe ideas, these issues have gained mainstream acceptance, thanks in part to the tireless efforts of those who dared to challenge the prevailing orthodoxy. These shifts in societal attitudes underscore a fundamental truth. Morality is not a static, monolithic entity, but rather a fluid, ever-evolving reflection of our collective values and beliefs. In today's hyper-connected world, we are constantly bombarded with information, much of it tailored to our existing biases. Social media algorithms, designed to keep us engaged and clicking, often trap us in echo chambers of like-mindedness, where dissenting voices are muted and opposing viewpoints are rarely encountered. This creates a dangerous illusion of consensus, leading us to believe that our perspectives are universally shared, and that those who disagree are simply wrong, misinformed, or worse. Within these echo chambers, the bandwagon effect is amplified as we are constantly exposed to the same ideas, the same opinions, the same limited perspectives. This can lead to intellectual stagnation, a kind of groupthink, where critical thinking is replaced by blind adherence to the prevailing dogma. The consequences of this echo chamber effect can be profound. It can lead to increased polarization, reduced empathy for those with different views, and a diminished capacity for civil discourse. In extreme cases, it can even contribute to the spread of misinformation and the erosion of trust in democratic institutions. Conformity, while seemingly harmless, can exact a steep price, both on individuals and on society as a whole. When we silence our own doubts, suppress our own critical thinking, and blindly follow the crowd, we become complicit in perpetuating potentially harmful norms and beliefs. History is replete with examples of times when the unquestioning acceptance of the status quo led to injustice, suffering, and even genocide. The Holocaust, for instance, could not have occurred without the widespread complicity of ordinary people who, out of fear or indifference, chose to remain silent in the face of evil. This is not to suggest that everyone who conforms is morally culpable for the actions of the group. However, it is a stark reminder that our individual choices, our willingness to speak up or remain silent, have consequences that extend far beyond ourselves. When we choose conformity over conscience, we abdicate our responsibility to uphold what is right, to challenge what is wrong, and to shape a more just and equitable world. So how do we break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the liberating power of independent thought? It begins with cultivating a healthy skepticism towards received wisdom, a willingness to question everything, to challenge assumptions, and to think for ourselves. Don't be afraid to be the lone voice of dissent, the one who dares to point out the emperor's new clothes. Embrace intellectual curiosity, seek out diverse perspectives, and engage in respectful dialogue with those who hold different views. Remember, the most important conversations are often the ones that make us uncomfortable, the ones that challenge our preconceived notions and force us to confront our own biases. The world needs more independent thinkers, more critical minds, more individuals willing to stand up for what they believe in, even when it's unpopular, even when it's difficult, even when it's scary. So, go out there, be the change you want to see in the world, and never, ever underestimate the power of one voice to make a difference.